Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation above the Black Sea that took place on the 14th of March. According to the official position of Russian Federation, of the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, early in the morning of the 14th of March they discovered a drone that were flying in direction of Russian border. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that that drone broke the temporary mode of airspace usage above the Black Sea that the Russians established as a result or during the special military operation. Furthermore, according to the Russian sources, that drone turned off all the signals, so the Russians couldn't identify whom this drone belonged to. So that's why the Russians took a decision to raise their fighters, and those fighters were flying in direction of that drone. Then the Russians are not saying anything, just they raised the flights, their fighters, and after that the Russians are saying that as a result of a sharp maneuvering, that drone fell down and was destroyed. So this is the situation about the Black Sea and about the drone. Later, during the 15th of March, there was at least two calls between the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation and the Ministry of Defense of the United States of America. They were discussing the situation. They provided us small notes about the topics that they discussed. Furthermore, later there was another call between the General Staff, the head of General Staff of two countries. They discussed something about, I believe that they were talking about the same thing, but we know for sure for now that as a result of all those discussions, as the result of that incident with the drone, the United States of America took a decision not to fly above the Black Sea in the nearest future. I don't think that they're not going to fly at all, but for now they need to find a solution how to secure the drones. And they just need to find a solution how to do this in the better way, so the Russians are no longer able to shut them down. Maybe they will use not just the drones, but also they will use fighters as well. That the main goal will be to fly with the drones and not to allow the Russians fighters to shut them down or something like this. So this is the situation. But we know that this is not the first case since the beginning of the special military operation. This is not the first case since I believe the 21st century, when the states are using drones for some purposes. So before we understand the reasons why the Russians took a decision to shut down the drones, first of all, let's try to analyze and let's try to remember any other cases that took place during the special military operation. And we can say that the whole story started on the 14th of April. 14th of April, I'll remind you one more time, if you remember, this is the Snake Island. This is Ukraine, and if you remember, Ukrainians using two Neptune harpoons attacked the Russian cruiser Moscow, and as a result of that attack, that cruiser was destroyed. We know that. So all the time, this cruiser was spotted and was discovered, was under control of states drones. But there is a little difference that when talking about the situation the 14th of March, that drone was above the territory of Black Sea, but when talking about the cruiser Moscow, the drones were flying on above the territory of Romania. So it's not the same, but it's the story from the same picture. So that was, we can say, the first step of this battle between Russia and United States of America when talking about drones. So that was the first case. Then on the 31st of July, I believe that there were a lot of cases, but today we will discuss that's the most important, the most famous, I must say. So on the 31st of July, the Ukrainians attacked the headquarters of naval forces that located in Sevastopol. They sent their own small drone, and as a result of that attack, six people were wounded, and all that time on the vicinity of the Crimea, there was a Global Hawk drone in the vicinity of Crimea. So that incident took place on the 31st of July. The next accident took place on the 9th of August. If you remember, there is a small airport in the vicinity of Novofyodorovka. This one that was a very important and very big base for the Russian Air Forces, and as a result of attack, As a result of attack, the Russians lost at least 7 airplanes and 2 were damaged. And all the time, there was a Reaper in 100 kilometers from Crimea. So this is like the third case, a famous case that took place during the previous year. On the 17th of August, there was another case, in the vicinity of Jankoy. So as you can see, there is a lot of railroads in this area that the Russians were using these railroads to supply and support the Russian forces that were located in Kherson, in Zaporozhye. And as you can see, there is a small logistic hub. There is more railroads that goes further to the north. There is a railroad. So the Russians were using this area as an ammo depot as well, strategic ammo depot. And the Ukrainians attacked that ammo depot, and if you remember, explosions lasted around 24 hours in this area, and there was a Global Hawk in the vicinity of the Crimea, and I believe that Hawk provided information to Ukrainians about those warehouses and so on. On the 21st of September, if you remember, there was the first case when the Russians spotted the maritime drone. So that was, I don't know what happened there, but I remember that somehow the Ukrainians or NATO lost control of that drone, and the Russians managed to got that drone from the sea. Somehow they managed to, I don't know, to take that drone, control over that drone. So that was on the 21st of September. So that was very interesting. Don't forget that on the 8th of October, the Ukrainians destroyed Crimea Bridge, or at least not destroyed, but at least they dealt a lot of damage. As a result of that attack, we remember that a few lines were broken, and don't forget that all that time there were a Global Hawk and Reaper that later changed the Global Hawk in 70 kilometers from that bridge. So this is another case, and the most, I believe, nearest case was on the 29th of October, when the Ukrainians were trying to attack Sevastopol naval base using the maritime drones. So they were attacking these drones, and that was not just one. They were trying to penetrate and to get to cross this area and to attack the Russian port in this area and to destroy the Russian ships. If you remember, the Russians managed to discover those drones and destroy them. And this about the situation about special operation about Ukraine. I believe that there were much more cases, but I just try to remind you the most famous or something like this. Don't forget that there were more cases. Don't forget about the killing of Soleimani. If you remember, there was a case. Just a second. If you remember, there was a case when the United States using the drones attacked and killed the general of Iranian army, Soleimani. That also was the case. When talking about the area where the states are using the bases to deploy these drones, mainly they're using two countries, Romanian and Italian air bases, and they're using these two places to deploy their drones and to discover and spot the situation above the Black Sea. And it's, by the way, this is very expensive drones. For example, the cost of those drones starting somewhere from 30 millions till 200 millions. It depends on the model and so on. So that was the case. And now you understand the damage that those drones, surviving made to the Russians, starting from the beginning of the special operation. They lost one ship, one cruiser. They lost at least 9 airplanes. They have almost lost the bridge. They have lost the ammo depots. There was a risk of losing their ships and their naval forces in Crimea. So that this is a very risky situation, and the Russians understand that they can't risk so much. So that's why they took a decision. They were forced to do this. Believe me, they were forced to do this, and they see the real connection, the strict connection between these Hawks and the results of Ukrainian special forces of their operation. So that's why the Russians took a decision to shut down that drones, and I believe that, according to the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation, I believe they're going to do this from now on all the time. They will shut down everything that flies above the Black Sea and that provides information to Ukrainian intelligence. And I believe that If we take a look at the Crimea, I believe that the Russians need to create, if they want to be secure, they need to create something around 200 kilometers secure zone and to destroy everything that flies above this territory. We understand that it's illegal according to the international law, but who talks about legal procedures these days when talking about special military operation? The Russians don't have any other option. So this is about the Crimea, and this is about that drone. But this is not the only thing that I want to tell you. If you remember yesterday, I told you that this is not like the first case. There are at least 4 cases that took place since the beginning of special operation, and they're completely connected to each other. The first case was that when the Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. So you might ask, what is the connection between the Nancy Pelosi visiting Taiwan and the shutting down of drones above the Black Sea? I'll tell you later. Another case was when the some forces, according to the Western sources, according to US sources, that those Nord Stream were destroyed by the Ukrainian special forces. But this is like, let's say, the third case. So the destroyed of Nord Stream, the shutdown of drone above the Black Sea, and the visit Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan. And the fourth case is the balloons that were flying above the territory of states, Chinese balloons that were flying above the states. So you may ask, what is the connection between these 4 cases? And I'll tell you that there is a war in Ukraine, but there is another war. There is another war, and that not in Ukraine. There is, let's say, there is a global war, and this war is not between the countries or not between armies. This is a war between 3 people, and I'm talking about Joe Biden, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin, and I'm talking about Comrade C. So there are 3 people in the world, and these people are leaders of most of the powerful countries: Putin, Biden, and Comrade C. And everybody, and this war, I call this war from myself, is a war of humiliations. And there are a lot of things that we can describe these wars, and the most important thing that describe this war is, according to this war, there are no casualties among people. So this is the first thing that we can understand, that this is the war of humiliations. What does it mean? If you remember, when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, nobody died. When talking about Nord Streams, nobody died as well. When the Russians destroyed that drone, nobody died as well. And when the Ukrainians were shutting down those Chinese balloons, nobody died as well then as well. And the main goal that these people want to achieve by these, let's say, battles of humiliation, is to humiliate the opponent. So by the fact when the Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, we understand that Comrade C was humiliated by the states. When the Ukrainian special forces, reading quotes, destroyed the Nord Stream, the Western countries wanted to humiliate Putin. When there was balloons above the territory of the United States, the Comrade C wanted to humiliate Biden. When the Russians destroyed the drones above the Black Sea, Putin wanted to humiliate Biden and the entire NATO. So the question, another thing that we can describe all this war of humiliation with one word. So the symbol of these battles is, what can you do with this? So when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, we can say that the states were asking Comrade C, what can you do with this? When the Ukrainian special forces destroyed Nord Stream, we can say that Western countries were asking Russia, what can you do with this? When Chinese balloons were spotted above the territory of states, we can say that the Chinese were asking states, what can you do with this? And when the Russians destroyed the drones above the Black Sea, the Russians were asking Biden, what can you do with this? So this is the thing that we can use to describe this war of humiliation. And to tell the truth, this is a very interesting situation, because this is some kind of the first signs, the first steps of further upcoming Cold War. So we know that sooner or later the special military operation is going to be ended. And And there are a lot of ways how this special operation can be ended, and one of them that this special operation can be transferred into Cold War, into this war of humiliations, when one leader or another will try to humiliate the others and to get as much as possible benefits from this situation. Because we know that when talking about Ukraine, and people understand that a lot of people are dying there, they need to spend a lot of resources to build tanks, to build ammo, and so on. And this is not a good situation for everybody. Nobody is winning from the situation in Ukraine, from this special operation. But when talking about this war of humiliation, we see that these small things, when nobody dies, brings a lot of benefits. For example, when the Russians shut down this drone, the Russian soldiers, the Russian forces, the Russian segment of internet was so inspired, even more inspired than from the situation of taking Mariupol, or from the situation when the Russians encircled Bakhmut. So they were more inspired. So this, just a regular situation when the Russians shut down the state's drone, brought more benefits for the Russians than the entire special operation. Remember the situation with the Taiwan. Just a small visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan inspired the Americans and the world and gave more benefits than, I don't know, the real war with the Chinese. And for example, when we saw the Chinese balloon above the territory of the United States of America, we saw that this situation brought a lot of benefits to Comrade C without almost no actions. So to tell the truth, he did nothing. He just gave a few orders, and very cheap balloons start flying above the territory of states. The most expensive operation, of course, was the operation with the Nord Stream, because it's really expensive. It's really expensive. And I believe that when talking about the Black Sea, the states reported that they are not planning to fly above this sea in the future, but it doesn't mean that they're not going to do this at all. For now, what they're doing right now, they're trying to find a plan and to create a plan how to humiliate Putin one more time. Of course, there are a lot of ways to do this. For example, one of them is, let's say, to complete the story with Transnistria, but in this case there might be casualties among civilians. So this might be not a part of war of humiliations, because one of the most important sides of war of humiliation is that there are no casualties among civilians, among anybody. So this is the most important thing that can describe this war of humiliations. And now I believe that the states are trying to prepare another plan how to humiliate Putin, how to humiliate Comrade C, and I believe from these sides, from Putin and C, they also think what to do with Biden. But another thing, don't need to think that Putin and Comrade C together against Biden, or let's say Comrade C with Biden against Putin. Everybody plays its own role, because from one side we can say that the Russians destroyed the state's drone above the Black Sea and they were trying to humiliate Biden and the entire NATO system. But you need to understand that from the other side we can read this case not just like the case where the Russians were trying to humiliate Biden. If you remember, on the 21st of March, there's going to be a meeting between Comrade C and Putin on the territory of Russian Federation, and Comrade C is going to visit Russia, and they're going to have a meeting with Putin. And imagine yourself before, like 5 days before, or before a week when Comrade C arrives, the Russians destroyed a drone above the Black Sea. So we can say that they tried to show the Chinese what could they do with the airplane of Pelosi. So this is a little bit humiliation as well in direction of Chinese, because they were like, I don't think that the Russians were trying to do this, but from my perspective, I read this exactly as I'm telling you. So from one side, the Russians destroyed the drone, but from the other side, they shown the Chinese what should they done in the last year when Pelosi were flying in direction of Taiwan. So I'm not saying that, as I told you, one of the most important things side of this war of humiliations is that there are no casualties among civilians. But believe me, there are thousands of ways how the Chinese were able to not to allow the plane of Pelosi to set on Taiwan. Thousands of ways. but they did nothing. So maybe that was another small, it wasn't like accumulation, but at least a small thing in direction of Chinese. So this is the situation, and I believe that within the next few weeks we're going to see another event, another accumulation. So it's very interesting, and I believe that we will discuss the upcoming accumulation as well. So that's it for today. That's it for this morning for accumulation wars or wars of accumulation. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, enjoy my Patreon. Have a good day. Bye bye.